brief rise of attention. It faded just as quickly. I didn't reach for my pocket, didn't check anything. There was a time that sound meant something, a shift in mood, a change in direction. Now it was just noise. I kept walking, letting the moment pass without attaching to it. It's strange how certain habits live longer than their purpose, how the body remembers even when the heart has moved on. I didn't feel disconnected, I didn't feel relief, I just felt neutral. Stepped outside something that once defined me. Not broken, not repaired, just finished. And that quiet finality didn't need explanation. just clearer. Hesitation. I didn't reach for my phone, didn't look for a distraction. I just sat there, breathing, aware of how far I had come without realizing it. Some changes don't arrive all at once, they reveal themselves quietly. just enough. Some things don't need fixing, they just need acknowledgement. I stood up and took a step forward, not thinking about where I was going, just trusting that I wasn't standing still and knew. I opened the window and let the air move through the room. Not to change anything, just to let something new pass through. The curtain shifted slightly, a slow, almost careful motion, like it didn't want to disturb what was already there. I stood beside it for a moment, feeling the difference on my skin. The outside meeting the inside. There was a time I closed everything off, windows, doors, parts of myself, trying to control what entered, trying to avoid what might leave. Now I understand it differently. Nothing stays because you force it. Nothing leaves because you fail. Some things just pass through. I didn't rush to close the window. I let the air remain. Not because I needed it, but because I didn't need to stop it. And in that small decision, I realized I wasn't afraid of change anymore. just waited, listening to the quiet mechanical movement. There was a time I hated it waiting. Every pause felt like delay. Every second felt like something slipping away. Now it just felt neutral, not wasted, not stolen, just time being time. The doors open eventually, empty. No one inside, no one stepping out. Just space. I stepped in without thinking, turned towards the mirror on the back wall. My reflection didn't ask anything from me. It didn't need explanation. It didn't need justification. It just existed. The doors closed gently, and I realized I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I was just moving forward, because that's what I do now. Stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, not because something blocked my way, but because a smell caught me off guard. Someone nearby was wearing the same cologne you used to wear, that exact one, that familiar trace. For a second, it didn't feel like memory. It felt present. I didn't turn around, didn't need to see who it was. Some things don't belong to people anymore. They belong to time. I stood there longer than anyone would notice, letting the moment move through me, not hold. just stood there, quiet, permanent. I finished washing it and set it down gently, not because it was fragile, but because I understood it different now. Some things don't stop being useful just because they've changed. They just carry their history different. Something specific, just forward, and that felt honest. each one moving through their own version of time. I stay there for a while, not waiting for clarity, not waiting for change. Just existing in the same world without needing it to respond to me. Eventually, I stood up, not because something ended, but because I was ready to continue. The street was empty anyway. No cars coming, no one behind me. 'cause I was ready. There's a difference now between reacting and choosing. I don't move out of habit anymore. I move when it feels true, and somehow it makes every step feel more mine. I notice the sound of my keys when I set them down. A small metallic echo against the table. Something ordinary, something I never paid attention to before. I stood there for a moment after, listening to how quickly the sound disappeared. I was standing in line when I realized I wasn't thinking about anything. No replayed conversations, no imagined outcomes, just the sound of someone counting coins ahead of me, and the quiet rhythm of waiting. It felt unfamiliar at first, that kind of mental silence. There was a time my mind never rested, always holding on to something, always anticipating. Now it just paused, not empty, just still. I shifted my weight slightly, feeling the ground beneath my feet. Nothing dramatic, nothing symbolic, just presence. When it was my turn, I stepped forward without hesitation, without overthinking, just moving naturally. And in that small moment I understood, peace doesn't announce itself, it just arrives and stays long enough for you to notice. I went back to the kitchen and leaned against the counter. The clock above the stove kept moving, unaware of anything I was feeling, unaware of anything at all. There was comfort in that, knowing the world doesn't stop just because something inside you does. I remember nights when time felt heavier, when every minute carried weight, when I didn't know how to exist without holding on to something. Tonight I felt just rest.